Hello guys, I'm Hades from the Gaming Room. Welcome back to another video. This is going to be a movie review, something slightly different. If my voice does sound different, that's because I got a bit of a sore throat. Sorry about that. Can't do much. Anyway, today is the 30th. Yesterday was the 29th, and I saw Captain America Civil War. So, this review, it's going to be done in a couple of parts. First of all is the overview, which is what I'm going to do now. Then the good, the bad, and final thoughts, and a score out of 100. So, starting off the overview. The movie was absolutely brilliant. It was probably the strongest Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, and in general, this might be going a little bit far, but one of the better superhero movies we've seen ever since, for a very long time actually. I mean, bit of context, my favourite superhero movie of all time is The Dark Knight, followed probably by The Winter Soldier or Guardians of the Galaxy. I really like those movies. I've seen every single Marvel Cinematic Universe movie and most DC movies. And yeah, this movie was really good. The action was just on point. I genuinely felt like the action was realistic. Like, if, you know, these superheroes were there in real life, this is exactly how it would go down. And yeah, this review is going to be also no spoilers. So, let's get into the good. The good parts of the movie. The good parts were just amazing. At no point the bad parts felt like there was more bad parts than the good parts, which is obviously fantastic. But let's start off with the good parts. First of all, the action. Oh my god, was the action so good. So, this is one of the best superhero movies I've seen in a long time, like I've said before. It just feels so good. Like, the action was just on point. At every moment, I felt like the action was genuine. Like, if this was taking place in real life, that's exactly how it would happen, you know. It didn't feel kind of artificial or, you know, fake at any point. I genuinely felt like the punches they were throwing, they were real. The fights they were having, real. Everything was real. Everything felt so good. Some characters had, because this is a spoiler-free review, I'm not going to talk about which characters, but some of them had such good action. I genuinely was like, oh my god, like, what I did. I expected this movie to be good, but the action was just next level. Like, it was impressive and a bit. Like, it really was good. And it really was just phenomenal. So the characters had great action, the fights felt real. Some of the scenes were so fantastic. Not going to give away anything away, don't worry, no spoilers here. There's a scene where they are getting chased. Again, I'm not going to say who, but they're getting chased through, you know, on this road, and there's some cars, and there's some fantastic action that I've seen before, but I don't think I've seen such an interesting take on it, and I haven't seen it done so well. It was really good. The standout scene, however, was definitely, by far, the airport scene. Again, no spoilers, not going to talk too much about it, just going to say it was a beautiful scene. The action was just so good, it felt so authentic, it felt so just perfect. Like, if I imagine a movie where a superhero fights another superhero and I wanted to fight, that's exactly how it would be. It was literally just perfect, it was a dream. So, that was literally amazing. I loved that so much, and that was really good. I mean, I literally don't want to give anything away about the action, so I'm not going to talk too much about it anymore. All I want to say, it was brilliant. One of the best action-filled movies I've seen in a long time. Okay, so next, let's get into this. So, the story. This is something that's really important in a lot of action movies, and it's often overlooked. You kind of get this mentality where someone decides, you know what, let's do the action and then let's kind of do a story maybe, and they don't put an emphasis on story, which is just, it's bad, because then you can end up with great action, but if the story's weak, it doesn't really do anything, just the movie kind of misses the mark completely. Here, I mean, even in the interviews, you hear the cast, the directors talk about all the time where they say, what we did is we wrote a story, and then that story happened to have good action. We didn't get good action and put a story over it. The story always came first, and that's noticeable because the story is really solid. Like, if two superheroes were to be fighting about any issue, not just this, that's exactly how it would go down. It is just perfect how the government worked, how the different teams, their ideologies, how they worked. It was really fantastic. And the difficult thing about this movie is I can't talk about the story pretty much at all, because from minute one, the second I start talking about what happened in the story, it kind of leads to spoilers. I mean, you guys know what the movie is about. It's about Captain America versus Iron Man fighting because they have different ideologies, and that's as much as I can say. But it did feel really good. Like, the story was genuinely strong. Like, if you want a superhero fighting superhero, you want reasons, and you felt that Iron Man had genuine reasons and Captain America had genuine reasons. It didn't feel like they were just like, okay, fight, there you go. They genuinely had reasons for why they were fighting, and it was just done so well. Like, you felt they were trying to resist it. They didn't want to fight, and every moment they were trying to resist it, but often they were put in situations where they couldn't, and they genuinely had to. But it did feel like they did want to, and what they were fighting about was actually like genuine, and that, that's brilliant. That's really what you want. The story is now very good, we have that established, but the next important thing is kind of the two sides, because this is not just a movie where here's one side good, other side bad, there you go. It doesn't work like that. It's much more complex, and that's something very refreshing to see in a movie, where you kind of have to pick the side based on what you feel, or what characters you like more, not just it being given on a silver platter. Good guys, those bad guys, fight. So that's very refreshing and very awesome to see. And the only kind of bad thing that I will say about this, again, this will be in a bad part of the review, I don't personally think so, but my friend raised this. It's a Captain America movie, so he does get more screen time and is slightly biased. Again, I'll talk about that more. But I did genuinely feel like the characters on both sides were balanced. It wasn't unfair, which is great, but at every point of the movie, I don't think anyone kind of just went, okay, I'm Team Iron Man, boom, Team Iron Man for the win, the end. Or went, Team Captain America, the end. I feel like during this movie, even if you're one team or the other, at some point you kind of switch sides for a bit, just because how this movie presents the arguments. It doesn't just present, here's our argument, I'll pick a side. During the plot, again, can't talk too much about this, but during the plot, events take place which change things, and after those changes you kind of go, oh, okay, I now actually think that side is better. So during this movie, well, I'm not saying you definitely will, but most people do change sides, and who you favour at the beginning might not be the same person you favour at the end, which is very interesting, very cool, and I actually really enjoyed that about the movie. I really did that, it wasn't just, because so many times we go into a superhero movie, bad, good, choose side, and, or once you choose, even if we do have a movie like that, it's like, you choose this superhero until the very end, you're going to stick with him because nothing changes. This plot, it felt organic because things did change, and your thoughts and feelings and emotions towards certain characters, certain plot lines, it changed, which is just great. So that's the characters. Next we could talk about acting, the CGI, and just kind of everything else. So CGI was really good, it was on point, it was just what you come to expect from a Marvel movie. Certain bad parts about it, I'll talk about that in a bad section, but it was really good and I enjoyed that, so that was awesome. Editing was great, I didn't notice any inherent mistakes, movie logic, pretty sound, to be honest. Like, I didn't feel like there was something ridiculously stupid happening. I was like, oh, that wouldn't happen in real life. This is not much of a spoiler, but there are certain scenes which, at the beginning, some people might be like, oh, that character maybe wouldn't have survived that. That's not much of a spoiler, but at the end of the day, these are kind of superheroes, so the same kind of laws don't apply to them necessarily, so it's kind of like, okay, fantasy movie, I can kind of understand that. My friend had kind of was like, raised this point to me, I was like, well, yeah, I guess you have a point there, but It's not much of a complaint, but it really was good. I enjoyed that. And here's the big part, the characters. This is an ensemble movie, which means there's going to be a lot of characters, meaning they all have to have their motives, they have to have character development, they have to be involved in the plot. They can't just be there for any reason. And I feel like every single one of them was achieved for each character. Like, no character just showed up there and was like, hey, I'm there, because why not? They all kind of felt, every single character had the reason. Even some people can say, oh, that character didn't have the reason, but when you think about it, they actually did. And there's dialogue explaining it. It never felt clunky or it felt like unnecessary exposition. They were just genuinely stating a reason, and I feel it was presented really well. You know, every character had a reason to be there. The characters who weren't there, it was explained kind of why they weren't there, not fully. My friend did raise a good point when we walked out cinema, like, oh, why wasn't this character there? That really wasn't explained. True, but you know, I didn't feel there was an issue without those characters being there. Otherwise, there would be too many characters. I feel there was perfect amount of characters. Like, it was just exactly perfect. And I've never seen a movie which has managed to juggle as many characters so perfectly, which is why I really think this movie is amazing. Every character had some kind of development throughout. You know, some characters had smaller development, but that's purely because otherwise the movie would be 6 hours long. You know, what can you do? But they had genuine development, every single one of them, even if it was minor, but it was strong enough. And the best thing is, I think every character had decent screen time. They had decent screen time, and they had kind of decent, kind of everything. Like, I felt they were there for a reason. You know, the scenes which they were in, everyone did well in. No one was underwhelming, I don't think, which was great, because going into this movie, like, oh, so many characters, this character might overshadow this one, and it kind of becomes like, well, why was he there? No. Sorry about that. Absolutely not. Every character who was there, they're there for a reason, and it felt perfect. And it just was done so well. I mean, I've never seen a movie where so many characters are just done so well. Like Age of Ultron, again, where whichever side you sit on, good, bad, fence, the characters there weren't done as well. Some of them were underwhelming and felt like, you know, they're kind of there, don't really do much, not much point, just kind of there. But, you know, in this movie, I never felt that was the case, which is, you know, very important in a movie like this, and I'm very happy how well they did. The characters, fantastic. The acting was amazing. I don't feel there was like a bad part of acting. Some of the accents still a bit off, I must admit. Not spoiler, but for Scarlet Witch, you know, the accent is good, but it's kind of like, it's not the best accent you're gonna hear. You could definitely tell it's fake. Kind of bad. But apart from that, everything's spot on. Everyone always just like, oh, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, best acting. They did fantastic. But the one actor who actually doesn't, in any review I've seen, get enough credit is Sebastian Stan, and that's the Winter Soldier. Not a spoiler. Again, his acting is so on point, especially for a person who has to play such a difficult to play character, and I feel he really doesn't get enough credit. Every review I've seen, no one's given him enough credit for how well he does. Everyone's acting is brilliant, but Sebastian Stan, purely because of what he has to play and who he has to play, it's really amazing. So, as for characters, and I think that pretty much sums up the good part. The movie was just fantastic. We're going to move on to the bad parts and then conclusion. But anyway, everything in the movie hit the spot. The humour, it was slightly sparse. It wasn't as noticeable as in other Marvel movies, but there was very big reason for that, obviously. But even the humour that was there, it felt good. It felt like it wasn't just thrown in there for the sake. It was just like, yeah, a character like him would make a joke like that, you know. They genuinely would. So yeah, that's the good parts. Now let's move on to the bad parts. So, the bad parts. There wasn't too many. I'm going to have to get extremely nitpicky about this, actually. And, you know, sorry, but I have to have a bad part. So, CGI. As I said, it was really good, everything you expected. However, there were about one at the beginning. It was pretty noticeable that Falcon's wings, again, not a spoiler, were CGI. Just at the beginning of the movie, and I was kind of like, doesn't look great. And there was one scene where the CGI kind of was like, wasn't great, but that's kind of it. It's kind of like CGI was bad in 3 scenes in a 2.5-hour movie or something like that, which is just like, that's excusable. The movie is so long that certain parts are excusable having some bad CGI, like, and it wasn't even like really bad. It wasn't X-Men Origins Wolverine where you could clearly see his claws of CGI. It just wasn't, it wasn't perfect. But that's a really small gripe. It really doesn't affect the movie too much. Only, I think, 2 parts genuinely affected the movie. So, the next bad part, and this can be a genuine complaint. Some people will love this, some people not so much. The beginning of the movie, the opening scene, was all shaky cam. And it was really fast cut, shaky cam, like, some people love that. Some people don't mind it. For me, and the person I was sitting next to, one of my friends, it annoyed us. I don't like shaky cam, ever. I don't feel there is a need for shaky cam, ever. If you're going to have camera moving, please don't have shaky cam and a fast cut kind of style. It looks stupid, we don't know what's going on. That was probably my biggest gripe about the movie. And when someone is picking on the camera shaking, there's not much bad with the movie. If that's the only legitimate complaint, the camera was too shaky. But that gets fixed. That's not an issue. It's only an issue for the opening, and after the opening, you don't really see shaky cam anymore. So, total of what? 3% or 5% at most of the movie is shaky cam, which is not bad. So not much of a complaint there. One complaint about the story, again, no spoilers, so I keep having to say that, but don't worry, no spoilers, seriously. The bad guy. He wasn't the greatest, he wasn't the worst, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And the reason for that is, this movie doesn't need the bad guy. At the end of the day, this movie maybe would have gotten away without having a bad guy, possibly. However, that would have been, some plot holes would have been a bit like, the bad guy did kind of, he added to the story. He wasn't the strongest villain we've had, but that's because we didn't need a strong villain. And the problem with this is a complaint. However, it's not. I put it in a bad section just because, however, it's not. The bad guy wasn't great, but at the same time, the movie doesn't need a bad guy. He was necessary to the plot. His motives were good, and I like seeing this kind of bad guy where I understand his motives. For the very first time in a Marvel movie, I understand the villain's motives, and I can kind of get why he did everything. I genuinely feel like, oh, okay. But he wasn't the strongest villain. But again, not much of an issue because a great villain isn't needed. So, that's that. What else was bad about it? So the length. That can be argued that's a bad part. It was slightly long. I thought it was actually good, to be honest. I personally think the length was perfect because it allowed for character development, story development, good action. It was a bit slow to start at the beginning. Right, for me, I don't want to put this in. This is not bad for me that the movie is long or takes long to start. However, I do have to put it because for some people this is something that was bad. If you're just a person who only enjoys action, you're going into this movie, you're gonna have an issue with the beginning. If you're a person who's kind of in the middle, it's like, I want good action, good story, perfect. It does justice, it gives you good action and a good story. And if you're a person who just wants good story, perfect. Again, you get a great story and good action on top of that. So for the bad people, the problem is, in order for the conflict to seem organic, it does have to take a long chunk of the movie. I genuinely don't know how long. And I don't want to give you a timestamp because, I don't know. I didn't have my watch, I didn't have a watch on, I didn't have my phone on to check how long. But I'd say at least half an hour, but it's probably longer than that. Not much kind of in terms of fighting happens. There's some action scenes to do with other things, but it takes a while before it gets into Captain America fighting Iron Man. And that's because they really had to set up this argument to kind of seem genuine, to kind of seem realistic, and it took time. That's an issue for some people, but for me personally, I value the story so much that I understand why they did it. And I think it's better that they took their time to set this up, not just randomly Captain America and Iron Man kind of going, alright, I hate you now, let's fight. Grr. It was good. It felt good, like, there we go, here we go. It felt genuine. So that can be a complaint. However, I don't think it should be. The slow start is necessary in order to set up the plot and have a decent story. So I don't think that's a bad thing, unless you're only in a movie for action, then that's going to be, the beginning might be slightly boring for you. The final complaint, which again isn't much of a complaint, like, this is really nitpicky, but I didn't even think about this too much until my friend was very strongly Team Iron Man, and he said this should have been an Avengers movie, not a Captain America movie, because it was biased towards Captain America, not in the sense that plot or the views, but in the terms of screen time. We got more Captain America screen time than any other hero, and he was like, if it was an Avengers movie, we could have got an even split, which would have been better. True. However, I feel like even though Captain America gets the most screen time, obviously, again, Captain America movie, I feel like both the sides were equally balanced. I didn't feel like any of the sides' arguments or anything were underwhelming or bad. It was good, and that was amazing. Like, it was fair. I didn't feel like, Iron Man's kind of logic was worse than Captain America's. I don't think both their logic made sense for each character. Development, it made sense. Everything, it did make sense. Like, I didn't feel like it was biased particularly to one side. Well, yes, Captain America did get more screen time, again, his movie, but again, that's just not really even a complaint. Like, there should have been an Avengers movie instead of Captain America movie. That's not a complaint of the movie itself, but just it could have been an Avengers movie. I could see that happening, but I feel they've done justice. It was great. So this bad section was kind of really nitpicky. I'm sorry about that, but the movie really wasn't bad. So now let's get into the conclusion and the final verdict. So, the conclusion. The movie was just phenomenal. I urge everyone to see it. If you're a fan of Marvel, see it. Fan of Captain America, see it. Fan of Iron Man, see it. Fan of action, see it. Fan of great story, see it. My point is, see this movie, it's worth it. No wonder the critics have been praising it and the fans, because it genuinely is good. The only, genuine gripes I had with the movie was, the opening 5 minutes had shaky cam, and, some of the CGI in, 2 scenes wasn't perfect. That's not bad. I've seen movies, and I've had so much more gripe with them. This is just minimal. I don't remember the last time I saw a movie and I was, genuinely in the cinema, I was like, wow, this movie is really good, doesn't have issues. It felt good. It was great. I enjoyed it. Great action, great characters, great story. Everything was developed. It felt genuine. It didn't feel like I was watching a movie. It felt like I was watching, I was so engaged. I was like, yeah, this could happen. Some of the action, I was literally just sitting there with my jaw down to the floor, just kind of like, what? That just happened. I can't believe that just happened. And how realistic it looked. This movie is seriously so good, and I'm going to give this movie an 89 out of 100, which is fantastic. Just to put into perspective, I don't give movies that high of a rating. I feel the 90s are reserved really for the best movies I've ever seen. I've never given a movie a 100. Never. The highest score I've kind of given to a movie is 96. Not going to say what movie it is. And the only reason I'm not giving this movie a 90 is because I don't think it's the best movie of all time. Kind of 90s, again, are only, for me, reserved for the best movies of all time. Kind of your Gladiators, your Godfather, your Shawshank Redemption, kind of those kind of movies are the ones that get 90. 89 for a superhero movie is phenomenal. Only The Dark Knight is a superhero movie which I give a high rating to. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this review. Didn't spoil anything. I tried to be as, unbiased towards this movie as I can, but I did genuinely love it, and it's really good. So go and see it, guys. I've been Hades from the Gaming Room, and I will see you next time. Bye.